Welcome back. This is Talk of the Bay, KSQD 90.7 and KSQD.org. On part 2 of today's show, we talk about the Santa Cruz City Council seeking to criminalize the behavior of those who live in their vehicles throughout the city. Many of them, believe it or not, are close to the coast. We're talking about the City of Santa Cruz's recently passed Oversized Vehicle Ordinance. It was appealed first to the city's Planning Commission, and now it's headed to the California Coastal Commission. And you might wonder why. Well, we're going to dig into that on the show today. In an online petition put out there by Santa Cruz Cares, that petition states the Oversized Vehicle Ordinance is discriminatory parking permit program, which makes it impossible to own a large vehicle in the city of Santa Cruz unless you have a driveway to park it in. The OVO cruelly targets unhoused residents like students, working families, and the elderly poor, whose only shelter is a vehicle, making it easier for police to ticket and tow them, dramatically increasing housing instability for an already vulnerable group of people. The Oversized Vehicle Ordinance is not a safe parking bill, according to Santa Cruz Cares, the petition that they put out that's been online, and you can sign it still. Safe parking sites that the city develops are entirely untethered to this ordinance's existence, according to the petition, and the punitive restrictions and criminal penalties of this law will remain intact, even if safe parking sites are taken away. Well, I have 3 guests. 2 of them are in the studio and 1 is on the line. First, Lyra Filippini resides on the east side of Santa Cruz. She opposed the proposed new 151-unit 5-story development, but she's also a appellant on this case before the Coastal Commission. She's a co-director or a co-chair of Our Downtown, Our Future, and she keeps close tabs on market rate city development and advocates for affordable housing. She graduated in sociology from UCSC in 2006. Lyra Filippini, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Good to be back.
Hey, it's good to have you. I'm also going to introduce Reggie Meisler of Santa Cruz Cares. He's a software developer. Reggie, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Thanks, Chris.
And I'm going to ask Rachel Chavez to introduce herself. You're also with Santa Cruz Cares as well.
Yeah, I am.
And anything else you want to say?
I work with Santa Cruz Cares. Lived in Santa Cruz a long time. I work as a nurse. Yeah.
Cool. Are you in the nurses union?
I am in a nurses union, yes.
Oh, that's a great union. It's been out there a lot lately. Anyway, let's go around. We're going to start with you, Reggie Meisler. Why are you opposed to the City of Santa Cruz's Oversized Vehicle Ordinance enough to appeal it first to the Planning Commission and then to the Coastal Commission?
Well, I think what it really boils down to is that this bill was authored and iterated on by folks who do not have the well-being of people who live in vehicles at heart. The sort of interests behind who brought forward OVO, they're not service providers, they're not activists, they're not advocates. They are effectively just folks who want these vehicles to kind of leave the city because they believe that impacts of poverty related to being, unhoused, living in a vehicle and such are just too not in their interests, I suppose you could say.
Rachel Chavez, the same question. Why are you opposed to the City of Santa Cruz's Oversized Vehicle Ordinance?
I'll definitely echo what Reggie said in that I don't think the people who wrote the bill truly have people who live in vehicles in mind when they wrote this, although they certainly profess that they do. But actually looking at the bill and what it does, it makes things so much more difficult for people who live in their vehicles. It really goes against a ton of social science research that shows that this is really flawed and will greatly increase homelessness in town. It will destabilize people. There's just nothing good in it.
Lyra Filippini, how did you get? You're involved in a lot of stuff, as Rachel and Reggie are too. Different issues. How did you get involved in this one?
Well, just as Reggie and Rachel pointed out, this is fundamentally about criminalizing people who are struggling to survive and whose only shelter is their oversized vehicles. And on top of that, I feel like there's some really shady intention behind this. It seems a lot like a big show to appease the people who have issues with the people who are living in their oversized vehicles, and I'll point out why. All of the concerns that the community, and they are right to be concerned about some of these things, but all the concerns from the community about these oversized vehicles, like, potential of sewage dumping or trash buildup or that they haven't moved for weeks, all of those are already illegal. And the city is not enforcing them. They're also not providing avenues of help for these people and information, resources to these people to help them get on their feet. And fundamentally what this is a Band-Aid. It's a pretend show Band-Aid on this issue, because if the powers that be in our system and our police are not policing the things that actually are issues like sewage dumping, then what makes us believe that they would police the OVO? So fundamentally, this is a symbol. OVO is a symbol of who is welcome here and who is not. And it's prejudicial. It's wrong.
It's a realization that not everybody can have a house or even an apartment. I see it on campus all the time. I have students, a lot of students living, over the last 10 years, more and more students are choosing their vehicles to live in because it's just too much. They're getting pressure from their parents to graduate in 3 years. It's just, there's a whole bunch of things happening that make it very difficult to live in the city of Santa Cruz. Reggie Meisler of Santa Cruz Cares, could you take us through the process? At the city council, the Oversized Vehicle Ordinance did not pass the vote. It was 5-2, I believe. Was it 5-2 or 5-1, 6-1?
I'm sorry. The Oversized Vehicle Ordinance, when it first
came out of the city council, and then you appealed it to who?
Oh, okay. So here's how it works. So Oversized Vehicle Ordinance is a city ordinance. So it passed as a city ordinance. But what happened is you have this thing called the local coastal program. And so technically, even though we're a city and you can have ordinances, you can't have jurisdiction completely over the coastal zone. And we're a coastal city, right? So a good mile or so from the beach to the inland is what's called the coastal zone. And so laws that want to touch the coastal zone, the OVO was inspired by people parking on Delaware Avenue, Schaefer Road, natural bridges, and these are formally in the coastal zone. And so if they want this rule to apply to that location, they need a permit. Now, the first place to get a permit is their own zoning department. So traditionally, if you don't appeal something, zoning can just be like, hey, I'm part of city staff, you're part of city staff, looks good to me, right? They just kind of rubber stamp these types of ordinances. But so we came in, we appealed it, it went to Planning Commission, and then Planning Commission actually gave us some interesting concessions that made the safe parking more, following best practices. It was no barrier, real-time data, which means that if a police officer pulls you over, or, rather goes to your vehicle when you're trying to sleep at night and says, hey, go to a safe parking space, he has to know in real time whether that space is available, right? And so city staff, predictably, unfortunately, came back after Renee Golder, council member, did their own appeal. So we got these concessions in Planning Commission. Renee Golder appealed again with a council review, which was a free appeal that went back to city council. And we had to pay $700 for our appeal, but because Renee Golder's a city council member, it costs nothing to do that, right? So it goes back to city council after going to Planning Commission. City staff suggests getting rid of all of these concessions that we have, which is really unfortunate. And
everybody take a deep breath. Everybody okay out there? You getting this? That's a lot of information.
A lot of information.
But I think it's really instructive of how someone goes about appealing a decision by an elected body. And this is what Santa Cruz Cares, this is what Reggie Meisler did. What can you tell us some of the tweakings, some of the changes that the Planning Commission made that would have helped the ordinance?
Well, like I said, there was no barriers to going into a safe parking space, right? Which means that you didn't have to have vehicle registration. Your vehicle did not need to be operable. You could have a record, like you could be a felon. You could bring your pets. Like all of that stuff was basically taken away with the Planning Commission concessions, because a lot of people fall into these buckets that service providers don't necessarily like to deal with. And so that was great. The other thing is that there's a lot of reasons why people can't immediately go to a safe parking space. And so people had they added a concession that if you for some reason could not make it there due to a variety of reasons, you had 72 hours to just be in the spot you were, which was very nice. And then, like I said, you also had the real-time data, which I think is crucial. I mean, if you authentically think OVO is a good idea, you need the data. Otherwise, you're literally just telling people to go seek out a resource that you don't know is available or not.
So if the OVO gets enforced, as I'm understanding it's not being enforced yet, they're going to wait out this appeal process, although they are doing ticketing. What are they doing in the meantime, Reggie?
Well, people are watching to make sure that nobody's being ticketed with an OVO ticket. It seems like no one has gotten an OVO ticket yet. Even though they could give it in the city limits outside the coastal zone, they don't appear to have done that yet.
Liver Filippini, you wrote a letter to the Coastal Commission. Could you sort of sum up that letter and your argument for us and why you think the Coastal Commission should uphold this appeal? And I guess would it strike down the city's ordinance, or would it just ask them to go back and redo it?
Well, first they would, if this first round of appeal went in our favor, basically it would go through a second round of appeal called a de novo appeal, where they would really, with a fine-tooth comb, look at this ordinance and compare it to the Coastal Act and see if there's anything that, is a red flag. Does this conform to the Coastal Act or not? So, my letter is based around the fact that the Coastal Act really specifically discusses maximizing coastal access for everybody. So there's supposed to be equitable coastal access, and fundamentally what OVO does is restricts coastal access. Only certain people will be able to access the coast during certain hours. So if you, for instance, are handicapped and happen to have a handicapped vehicle that's over 20 feet long, you would not be able to go visit the coast at night without getting ticketed. Same thing goes for someone who is, residing in their oversized vehicle. If they wanted to just drive out there and park on streets where all normal-sized vehicles are allowed to park, and then walk out to the coast and get a little peace and tranquility at a time where there aren't as many other people out there, they would not be able to do so. So it fundamentally goes against the Coastal Act, and in a way that it harms a minority group, an environmental justice group, which is something that, I do believe is substantial. And the Coastal Commission should look at that very seriously and decide whether they want to approve something that is fundamentally prejudicial.
Yeah, I mean, the Coastal Commission staff is recommending it's insignificant, but in their report to the commission, it said, quote, "In fact, the city's evidence that nighttime oversized parking leads to public health, safety, and nuisance problems and associated coastal resource concerns to which the city-approved project purports to be a solution appears to actually be fairly limited, and it is not well fleshed out in a way that would allow more detailed conclusions to be drawn as it relates to oversized vehicles as compared to non-oversized vehicles, daytime versus nighttime hours, and actual coastal resource impacts. Thus, staff believes the record does not provide full support for the city's argument that the CDP is needed to address coastal resource impacts. So, I mean, on one hand, you have the staff saying this, and then later in the report, it says this is insignificant because it doesn't impact people's access to the coast. Lyra, how do you respond to that? You're saying it does. How do you convince the Coastal Commission that it does?
Well, fundamentally, what the staff says is that it doesn't affect enough people, that this is a small group of people that this affects. What's that definition? That's a minority. So in essence, the Coastal Commission staff is saying it's okay to cut out this minority's access, that we're all right with, limiting coastal resources only to certain types of people. And sure, they're the majority, but they're the only ones that can access this. And that is not who we are as a society. And I believe it directly goes against the Coastal Land Act, and that it is literally there to protect people like this group, which the Coastal Commission defines as an environmental justice group or something like that. Reggie probably has that memorized better than I do. But we really hope that the Coastal Commission comes to a different conclusion than the staff, and I think that there have been enough people to write in to show that they may.
Rachel Chavez, you're a nurse and you're a member of Santa Cruz Cares. What is Santa Cruz Cares? Tell us a little bit about what the work is and how you were brought into all of this, and what do you do as a member?
Sure. So Santa Cruz Cares really formed around a recent anti-homeless ordinance called the Camping Services and Standards Ordinance, which was originally called the Outdoor Living Ordinance. And it was just a number of us who were just really infuriated and shocked that this was going forward and trying to organize around that ordinance and how we could fight it. Ultimately, that did pass. And we just decided to kind of keep working together. And the Oversized Vehicle Ordinance came up, so we're working to fight that as well. We kind of do a mix of things and trying to do advocacy, and members of our groups also work with other local mutual aid groups like Sanitation for the People. We also have some online presence where we try and do a lot of education about criminalizing homelessness and what that means, looking at research and kind of helping people to be more informed about that topic.
Reggie Meisler, you touched on a bunch of hot button issues for people like felons being able to park their vehicles near someone's home. If you have a conversation with homeowners, what would you like to say to them that would try to get them to understand how critical the situation is and how dire people must be if it's not dire. A lot of people live in their vehicle because there's no other place for them to go.
Yeah, I think it's important just to sort of remind people that, these are just regular people. And more often than not, they're like people that they know. Their kids go to school with the homeowner kids, right? They're service workers who deliver food and stuff to them are living out of vehicles. City workers, we recently just learned, have been living out of vehicles. And of course, students, like you mentioned, are living out of vehicles. And so I think we have to separate this notion that people who are poor are also dangerous because, there is a lot of desperation in not having resources, not knowing if you'll have a meal, not knowing if you'll have shelter. And that can make people do things. But, we can also understand that as well. And it's I think it just helps to just kind of bring people into just sort of contextualizing more, not getting out of the fear-mongering that we often see in next door type spaces.
Hey, I pay my taxes. Why do these people have to park here in front of my house or near my house? Do you have an idea of where a safe parking site might be? And is that a goal in the work of Santa Cruz Cares?
I think there's definitely a lot of thinking. We haven't had the space because of the constant fighting of these ordinances to fully think about what comes next. But I think there is a lot of different ideas. And ironically, I would say Delaware Avenue, a lot of that, Schaefer Road, and natural bridges. I mean, these are like mostly vacant areas, right? They're corporate parks. On natural bridges, there's literally a vacant UCSC parking lot that people are parking outside of. That's just chained up. No one can ever get in. It's unused. So it's like, I think it's a very sort of a little bit bad faith, honestly, that folks are saying that these areas are like neighborhoods and like are just so disruptive. You know, I know that there's a mobile home park kitty corner to Schaefer Road, but the mobile home park is totally like walled off. People don't park in the mobile home park, right? They park across the street, kitty corner, and there's a lot of parking along there in order to access things like, hiking and things like that, and the UC stuff that's kind of in that corner.
But where are people going to dump their refuse? That's, how are people dumping there's nobody taking it in Santa Cruz, is there?
Well, here's the wild thing. Here's the really wild thing, Chris. We've done some public records requests, and we know that there have not been major ticketing or towing of the coastal zone since like February, maybe January. And what that means is that if you go down to that area in the coastal zone and it is not majorly impacted by trash and stuff, and by the way, the city is giving a trash receptacle to all the folks over there. There's just a big trash receptacle on Schaefer Road, and people are using it. And so if you go down to this area and you are not just like, I don't know, horrified by like the conditions, then what is that? It tells you that the policing and the harassment and the dehumanization, it just isn't helping, right? And it's, even if you believe that you want to mitigate impacts, we know that that's just not doing anything. It's just making people, feel pain.
Lyra Filippini, you're a data person. And I also had a conversation with you recently about the whole honey bucket thing. So 2 questions for you. Do you have any idea on the data how many people are actually living in their vehicles? How many families might be living in their vehicles? Has anybody taken a census? And the other one is, why can't we figure out the refuse issue here and how to get people's bathroom wastes out of their vehicles?
I actually am not aware of the current data count. Reggie probably actually has those numbers. What I do know is that the city's, safe parking program element of OVO did not in any way prepare enough parking spaces and what they were putting forward for the number of people that are out there. And a lot of the people that are living in their vehicles, it's transitional. It's a period they're looking for somewhere to rent. They are struggling to survive. They're trying to save a little bit of money for a while so that they can afford the rent. A lot of them are not breaking any laws. And I understand that it's scary and it's uncomfortable for a lot of the community to have that visual, to see the struggle. And I think a lot of it boils down to that. And there are some vehicles who probably are producing some of the concerns that we are hearing about, and that's probably very real. So I think that, when people get up in arms about this sort of thing, I think it's actually really understandable, but we need to, as a community, come together and problem solve. And, instead of criminalizing these people, let's look at these issues, the specifics. So if refuse dumping is an issue, how do we mitigate that? Can we provide pump stations that are not extremely expensive? Can we possibly have honey bucket services that, come out to these vehicles?
Can the city be getting the honey bucket business? Rachel Chavez, what would you say if you were going to speak to the Coastal Commission? Are you going to speak to the Coastal Commission? What would you say to them to convince them that the soundness of this appeal and that they should overturn it?
I mean, I really, when I'm thinking about this, if we take these concerns that OVO is supposed to address and really believe that they're true, and we want to genuinely mitigate these issues like trash, like dumping, we need to look at how we can support people in completing those activities, because people don't want to just, people don't want to do these things. People don't want to litter. People are doing these things because they don't have a better option. So how can we best support people? How can we give people the same resources that those of us who live in houses have access to?
Okay, so if you want to say something or go to the Coastal Commission meeting, you can go to the Coastal Commission website, and the appellants are the American Civil Liberties Union, our guests Rachel Chavez and Lyra Filippini, as well as Reggie Meisler, Micah Posner, Joy Schendeldecker, Marisol Goulet, and Alicia Kuehl and Chris Lang are all the appellants, and they're appealing the city coastal development permit of the City of Santa Cruz, which was the appeal was upheld at the city's planning commission, but then the city council voted it down 5-2. Reggie Meisler, you get the last word here. Anything that you'd like to say to get the troops?
Yeah, I feel really optimistic that there's some significant public access issues that ACLU has pointed out that are daytime issues, not just nighttime. So I'm very optimistic that we can have this get a substantial issue. But even then, we're going to do more stuff. This isn't going to be the end of the struggle against this type of stuff.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. We got listening to The Clash play Spanish Bombs, and you know what? The revolution will not be televised or recorded on radio, but will only happen if you go out there and get involved with others in your community and organize for it. And that's what this show's about. I'm Chris Krohn, the Santa Cruz Political Report, which comes out today in Bratton Online. This has been Talk of the Bay for July 12th, 2022. Next week, I will have writer and broadcaster Bruce Bratton for the entire hour. This show will be repeated Thursday at 6 a.m., and it is also available on the KSQD archive website. Thank you, Rachel Chavez. Thank you, Reggie Meisler. And thank you, Lyra Filippini, our guest tonight, as well as Ray Cancino of Community Bridges. Good night and good luck, Santa Cruz.